Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Joke Rogers here in Lagos. We start our program in the Republic of Congo, where a familiar face remains firmly in power as Denis Nguesso is sworn in for another term. The 82-year-old leader begins his fifth term after a landslide election victory, pledging jobs, development and economic revival. Speaking in Brazzaville, he vowed to boost agriculture, industry and infrastructure, promising a better future for the country's youth. But critics question the credibility of the vote, citing weak opposition and allegations of fraud. Our attention remains on President Nguesso's swearing-in ceremony attended by international delegations. A Russian delegation led by Alexander Novak joined leaders from across Africa and beyond, underscoring the event's geopolitical significance. Thousands filled the inauguration ceremony as representatives from major global powers, including the United States, China and France, looked on. With strong international presence and overwhelming electoral numbers, the ceremony highlights both Congo's strategic ties and the questions surrounding its political future. Still on the topic of presidential elections, this time in Benin Republic, a decisive ruling of the Constitutional Court has confirmed 49-year-old Romuald Wadagni as the country's new president. The president-elect scored over 94% of the vote, defeating opposition candidate Paul Hunkwe. Scenes from the streets of Cotonou show a calm acceptance, with observers praising the peaceful conduct and the opposition's concession. Critics point to the exclusion of key opposition figures amid growing concerns over lack of political competition. Mr. Wadagni steps into office on new constitutional reforms, ushering in a 7-year term. A race against time in South Sudan as the country prepares for its first ever post-independence elections. With December fast approaching, the United Nations mission in South Sudan is warning that critical gaps remain. Funding is limited, legal frameworks incomplete, and security plans still pending. Officials stress that credible elections depend on strong dispute resolution systems to maintain trust and stability. At a high-level symposium in Juba, stakeholders gathered to tackle these challenges, but concerns persist over readiness. Some experts caution against rushing the process, calling for stronger legal foundations before going to the polls.
The entire international community has a stake in ensuring that the transitional period comes to an end peacefully, and it transitions this country into a sovereign state, being able and willing to hold its first independent elections after the conclusion of the transitional period at the end of this year, 2026.
When citizens see that election-related disputes are handled fairly, transparently and efficiently, this can serve as a confidence-building measure, not just in the election process and outcome, but in the political and legal system in its entirety.
A major shake-up in Africa's tech outsourcing sector as Meta cuts ties with SAMA in Kenya. The decision will see more than 1,000 workers lose their jobs, many of them content moderators hired to police harmful material online. The move follows years of controversy, including lawsuits over alleged poor working conditions and psychological harm from exposure to graphic content. While SAMA denies wrongdoing, critics say the job came at a heavy human cost. Meta says it's shifting towards artificial intelligence to handle moderation. Broken electronics and discarded items are being transformed into new use in Ghana instead of allowing their disposal constitute health problems for citizens. Justice Owosu is a shop owner at the Agbogloshi dump site where plastic and metal items are stacked outside the scrapyard. He says most of the scraps come from Europe and that scrap dealers are likely to burn them. which will produce smoke that can be harmful to individuals with asthma and respiratory diseases. Justice is drawing attention to the dangers. The latest report by Greenpeace highlights the growing health and environmental crisis in Africa due to several contributing factors, including discarded electronics, weak law enforcement, an increase in imports of near end-of-life devices and unsafe recycling practices.
The goods basically come from Germany. So Germany goods, you can get all 100% or 70% working, 30% not working. So somebody, which is a person who is facing asthma, as maybe put in asthmatic person, can also like breathe in the smoke. That will cause the person harm more than everything. So I will advise my bloggers to bring goods which is perfect.
A lot of laws, right? But implementation is quite challenging. Enforcement is challenging, yes. And then, you know, the Abroboshi area, I think you find over 20,000 people working there. Those guys mostly, they also have extended families, right? You find an elderly person maybe with 10 children. And if you really enforce or you kick someone out of his business, the politician will feel it in the election time. You know, he can easily tell his family members and friends and vote for this party, don't vote for this party. So it's a quite difficult area, you know, for the government to really enforce.
Anticipation is building in Malabo as Pope Leo XIV prepares to arrive for the final leg of his African tour. The visit to Equatorial Guinea marks a rare moment for the deeply Catholic nation. Decades after the last pope visited, citizens share messages of faith, unity and social change as the pontiff meets President Teodoro Obiang Nguema Mbasogo. From Malabo to Mongomo and Bata, the Pope's message is expected to touch on justice, human rights and hope. As the tour concludes, many are watching to see the lasting impacts of this historic visit. Africa's drive to accelerate intercontinental trade under frameworks such as the African Continental Free Trade Area is gaining traction, but fragmented standard systems remain a major stumbling block. Industry leaders at the GS1 South Africa Ndaba 2026 in Johannesburg warned that these inefficiencies are quietly draining billions from African economies and continue to restrict market access, particularly for small and medium-sized enterprises. Our South Africa correspondent Innocent Semusa reports.
When you manufacture your product,
at the center of discussions is the urgent need to address fragmented standard systems which continue to delay exports, raise compliance costs, and create barriers for SMMEs trying to access regional and global markets.
So our event is about taking the veil out. So every South African knows you can go to the shop, you can go to a pharmacy, you can get your medicine or you can get your food, but you do not know how it gets there. And how, yes, you know there's manufacturers, there's retailers, but there's systems and standards and regulations that they need to adhere to. So we are unveiling and putting the veil out and showing South Africans how to get their products into the stores.
With Africa looking to fully unlock the potential of the African Continental Free Trade Area, experts here say improving traceability, harmonizing standards and strengthening enforcement could be key to enabling seamless cross-border trade and protecting consumers. I spoke to delegates about the major compliance challenge SMMEs encounter when trying to access regional markets.
the DRC sits at the center of a global supply of minerals in the energy transition, because electronics, batteries, and all the renewable technologies come from critical minerals that are mostly supplied by the DRC. So it's very important for us to establish trust for international long-term buyers and the trust from the international community.
Well, compliance is a very big issue when it comes to SMEs. A lot of times the SME has the brilliant idea of coming up with a product or a service, and it comes from a very good intention of growing and creating jobs. However, when it comes from a perspective where they don't think about compliance, it then comes as a barrier, and then they kind of look at it as trade barriers.
I think the most important thing to appreciate is we need to harmonize. That's the starting point. Once we have harmonized, we would then have a standard that we are all working with. So it then would help to have standards that are interoperable systems, which would then facilitate exchange or trade within the African continent.
The message here is clear. Fixing fragmented standards will be critical to turning trade ambitions into real economic growth. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Staying with the African economy, the International Monetary Fund is warning that Africa's economic recovery is at risk. The director in charge of the African department at the fund, Mr. Selassie Abibi, says escalating tensions in the Middle East is a threat, but policies backed with action can help change the narrative. However, Nigeria's Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, says the federal government is not laying low on the matter, but is building buffers against the shocks. Our correspondent, Sarah Chimugu, who covered the session at the spring meetings, reports.
It's the turn of the African department to brief on the state of the economy in the region, and the director of the department gives an analysis of the year 2025, which was marked by exchange rate reforms, subsidy removals, and tighter monetary policy.
And more importantly, sound.
However, 2026 begins with pressures on the gains.
The war in the Middle East is a major new external shock. Oil, gas, and fertilizer prices have surged. Shipping costs have risen. Trade with Gulf partners has been disrupted. Tourism and remittances are being squeezed. Financial conditions have tightened, particularly for fuel importing countries. We have accordingly revised our growth forecast down to 4.3% in 2026, some 0.3 percentage points below our pre-war projection, and are expecting median inflation to rise to around 5% by the end of the year.
Lesotho is at a briefing of Ministers of Finance for Africa, Nigeria's Minister of Finance and his colleagues highlight issues that are top on their agenda.
We are at the heart of multilateral institutions, and they are looking keenly at the response of those institutions to helping, in particular, the countries hardest hit, the countries less resilient and able to cope, and they fall largely and squarely within a quadrant where the African countries are the majority by far.
Now that we have this tool, we have around 28 countries actually who join this platform. If we all join this platform, the countries who face these issues of debt, then we will be more power to advocate, to make the plea, to manage this issue of debt. So this is the first thing. Free trade, how to improve infrastructure.
Mostly women.
The IMF says 2025 was a year of hard-won stability, and 2026 will test whether governments can defend those gains. For sub-Saharan Africa and indeed Nigeria, the message is disciplined policy at home and fast support from abroad will determine what happens next. From the World Bank IMF spring meetings in Washington, D.C., Sarah Chimugu, Channels Television News.
Back here in Nigeria, the ambassador of France to Nigeria has assured the Enugu State Governor, Mr. Peter Mba, of the required support to deliver clean water to residents of the state. He was speaking during the courtesy call on the governor at the government house in Enugu, where the governor shared the areas of needed support with the ambassador. He also commended Mr. Mba's developmental strides, highlighting Enugu Airlines as a major milestone.
You are a transformer and an entrepreneur. And this has been detected in various areas. So I think we have to congratulate you for the way you have promised to deliver water to the people. And through the AFD, France is proud to support your vision. I think and hope, Excellency, that you consider France as a fair and trustful partner in that field.
Our ultimate goal for the downstream would be to find, to outsource that to private sector, because we think that that's the best way to offer optimal service and to make sure that you have a private sector driving that downstream. We will continue to play as the upstream providers. We will continue to generate the water, but we need a private sector participation in the downstream.
Meanwhile, the Republic of Korea and UNICEF have joined forces with Nigeria in a landmark effort to reach the country's unvaccinated children with life-saving vaccines. This partnership was formally launched as a ceremony in Badagry, Lagos State, marking the start of a targeted program to identify and vaccinate children who have never received routine immunization known as zero-dose children, and to strengthen routine immunization services across 6 states where the need is greatest. The program will operate through Nigeria's existing national and state health systems, supporting government efforts to improve vaccine delivery, rebuild community trust and ensure no child is left behind. Key interventions include community mobilization, systematic tracking of children who missed their vaccinations, and integrated health service delivery, all designated to find and reach unvaccinated children wherever they are.
Today, what we are doing, we're not just launching a partnership. This is really an investment in our collective future. And I think we are in Badagry here in Lagos State, which is a very critical state in Nigeria, and Nigeria is a very critical country in Africa and in the globe. And I think, as mentioned by the Honorable Chairman, vaccination is by far the most effective and powerful public health intervention. We estimate that every year at least 4 million lives are saved by vaccination. Communities are protected from outbreaks by vaccination. And I think our collective global health is also protected by vaccination. And you know, here in Nigeria, we estimate that there are around 2 million children what's called zero dose. When we say zero dose, we're talking about the children who did not get a single shot of routine vaccination.
During the first year from 2023, $20 million was budgeted for 22 countries. During the second year, 2024 to 2025, $30 million was budgeted for 34 countries. And during this third stage, 2025-2026, $20 million have been budgeted for 12 countries. As I mentioned, out of this $20 million budgeted for the third stage, $5.6 million has been earmarked for Nigeria's project, which will last for 1 year, December last year to December this year.
Art meets activism in Abuja, where contemporary artists are reigniting the debate on reparations and modern-day slavery. At the Nike Art Gallery, sculptors Emmanuel Ekokotu and Osamungworo Shegun Ikasa are transforming history into powerful visual statements. Their works drawn from African identity, spirituality, and the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade, while linking it to present-day economic and political realities. The message is bold. Slavery may have evolved to freedom, but its impact remains. The exhibition comes amid renewed calls for justice following a landmark ruling ordering the UK to pay compensation for colonial-era killings.
I use the tree roots to sculpt to remind us of our roots and our identity. Basically, that's what I sculpt with. And my works are not just works you come across as art piece. It's something that you see, and it is a reminder of who you are, your identity, your tradition, your culture. The same set of people that started the slavery, they are still on it, but on a more refined way through the politicians, the church house, the Islamic house, the religious leaders. I use most of our deities to title some of my works to make us understand where we come from, even as much as we believe in the Christian faith, which is borrowed to us. This is what we actually born into. And I have some of my maxes that I have titled The Blueface. The Blueface are the slaves that actually escaped from the ship during the time of the slavery, which they never talked of. They only speak of the ones that carried. The ones that escaped, they never talked of those ones. So I titled those faces, the blue face. Those blue faces actually escaped. We are the product of the blue face. Because we are still in Africa.
Many people still believe slavery is centuries back issues. But to me, I believe slavery is still in our day-to-day activities. So I capture it in my works. One of my current work now is in the gallery of a woman, both hands and feet are bound together. And is kind of seated in a very discomfort position. But if it's to be the transatlantic slavery era, you will see the chains and the shackles that is being used to bound her. But the current day slavery, you no longer see the chains. You no longer see the shackles. Even the slave don't even believe they are slaves. So what I did in that work is bringing the transatlantic and the current slavery. I marry together to create that piece.
We're talking, our fun fact about Africa is on Nigeria. The medieval Nigerian city of Benin was built to a scale comparable with the Great Wall of China. There was a vast system of defensive walling totaling 10,000 miles in all. Before the full extent of the city walling had become apparent, the Guinness Book of Records carried an entry in the 1974 edition that described the city as the largest earthworks in the world carried out prior to the mechanical era. Well, now you know. That's our program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Jackie Rogers.